My name is Juan Francisco, and I'm a psychic medium and tarot card reader. I've always been curious about the supernatural, the paranormal, and psychic abilities, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories with us. Let's get to it. Happy new podcast! So I wanted to start off by saying, number one, wow, I'm putting up the two fingers and I'm saying number one. Two things, wait, why are balloons popping up? If you are seeing my video on YouTube, balloons just popped up. That's weird. Anyways, I did the number two, my fingers, and balloons popped up. Very weird. I don't like how technology's going. If I don't want to do a thumbs up, don't do a graphic thumbs up. That's happening on people's cameras now, where people do like a thumbs up on FaceTime, on the iPhone, or on Zoom, and then like a thumbs up bubble pops up. It's like, why? It's annoying. Anyways, I'm not going to edit that. Y'all know that I'm very unedited, very raw and real. Back to what I was going to say before random balloons popped up on YouTube. Number one, I have my window open because it is a gorgeous day here in New York City. And it is high 60s, low 70s. And it's just, you can see the light in my room if you're watching on YouTube. It's just so beautiful. And the weather, it's just the air. Oh, I had no AC on last night while I was sleeping. And it was amazing. So if you hear noises, New York City noises, it may feel unprofessional to hear. It may sound unprofessional listening to a podcast and hearing sirens more clearly and noises outside. I'm going to embrace all that. You know that I do this from the comfort of my not one bedroom apartment studio, my studio apartment in New York City. And I'm okay with the noises. I'm okay with it. As long as you can hear me clearly through this microphone, which usually I sound clear. All right, number two. Before I go down a rabbit hole of random graphics popping up on my video on YouTube and other things, the weather. Number two, I want to share a response that a listener sent to me in response to my podcast, my last episode, which is focused on what a psychic should say when cheating and infidelity comes up in a reading. But I ended that episode asking for you folks to tell me if there's ever a time that a psychic gave you a prediction that ended up being wrong, like a prediction that they doubled down on and they said it was actually, or was really, really, really going to happen. They kept doubling down and you knew, it doesn't make sense. So this listener shared with me that, I'm going to keep them anonymous. That was their request, and I like to honor that. That they saw a psychic, and the psychic told them that they saw a baby stroller, and usually that means that the person's going to have kids soon. And this listener told the psychic, "Well, I don't want to have kids. It's not something I want to. I don't want to get pregnant. I do not want to have kids." And the psychic said then, "Well, when I see a baby stroller, it usually means there'll be a kid in 6 to 9 months, that you'll be pregnant in 6 to 9 months." And the listener told me that the psychic had doubled down on that. And the listener shared it with me because it was an example of when a psychic refuses to listen to the client, refuses to understand that this is not something the client wants, and just says, "Well, that's what I'm seeing and it's going to happen." And this listener was sharing with me how they felt, and I'm paraphrasing what they told me, that this was inappropriate. And yeah, especially with such a big life event like pregnancy, if someone tells you, I know you're seeing a baby in my future that I'm going to have, but I don't want to have kids. That's not what I don't feel called to have kids. To double down on that prediction, on that message, just seems very rude and dismissive, because this goes back to me, what I've said before on this podcast, what I've said on social media. If a psychic tells you they are 100% accurate, go in another direction. Go find another psychic. Sorry. I think that no psychic is perfect. We can get things wrong, and hey, maybe that psychic misinterpreted that message they were receiving for this client, the listener of the podcast. Maybe the new baby in the listener's life is a niece or a nephew. Maybe they're going to be working with children. I actually gave a reading in the past year where I told somebody, "I see you with little kids. I see you with little kids. I don't know what it is, and I felt like it was tied to their work. I said something about your work, you're working with little kids, or you're taking care of little kids, and they're like, uh, they had no, they were really clueless as to what that could mean, because their job had nothing to do with little kids. I mean, they worked in a place where little kids go to, but their work wasn't related to that. Well, within the next month, they were asked to do something at their job that required them to facilitate something with small children. So that's an example of I could have totally taken that message I was receiving and say you're gonna have kids the next year, but I did feel that it had something to do with her job. But there's so many ways. Despite me feeling something with her job, if I didn't center myself, if I had clutched onto my ego when she told me that it didn't make sense for her job, I could have easily doubled down on it and say maybe I could have taken to another direction because my ego, I don't know if I'm making any sense. Let me take a breather and collect my thoughts. The ego in a psychic ego, the ego when it comes to psychic work, the ego wants to be right. I'm making a prediction in a reading, and the person says, I don't understand that. So my ego's going to want to say something else to make it fit somehow, to make it right. And instead in that reading, I said, okay, if it doesn't make sense for your job, just like put it in the back of your mind. And if something pops up regarding your job and kids, that's validation of your messages heard in this reading, the other messages heard. And I think a psychic who has worked on themselves, has worked on their ego, taming the ego, a psychic who has comfort in being wrong, that is okay being wrong, is going to create a comfortable space, a safe space for a client, where a client doesn't feel like they have to fit the reading to their life. The reading is supposed to validate what's happening in their life and the decisions they want to make in their life, or the decisions that they shouldn't make in their life. Maybe it's going to guide them in a different direction. But a client shouldn't be made to feel. It's not the client's job to make a psychic feel good for being right. And I think in this example that the listener shared regarding the message about pregnancy, it doesn't sound like that psychic wanted to be told they were right. That wasn't so important to them. The psychic had no regard for this listener. No regard. Just, well, I'm right. I know I'm right. That's pretty much what they were saying in so many words. And with something like pregnancy, it's one thing to tell somebody, oh, I see you picking up this new project at your job. Okay, that's one thing. But pregnancy or moving across the country, I mean, pregnancy is, I mean, I don't know if anything can really compare to the topics of pregnancy, death, divorce, things that involve trauma. Pregnancy, for many people, involves a trauma to the body. And it's not to say that pregnancy is a bad thing. It's just for many people, there is pain that comes with pregnancy. There's a lot of discomfort. Or with having a child. Some people don't want to have a child because they feel like they are not either financially equipped to have a child, or they just don't see themselves being parents. Like me, I don't see myself becoming a parent one day. So if a psychic were to tell me you're going to be a father, I think I'd be a great father in some respects. But in many other respects, I think I wouldn't be a great father. And that's the reason I don't want to have children. So and just to clarify so people don't feel confused, I am very selfish with my time and energy. And why would I have a child, bring a human being into this world, only to gripe about not having my own time to myself? That's not being a good parent, in my opinion. I think that being a good parent is being willing to put your life aside to grow another human being. And some people are not in the headspace to do that. But there are many other reasons someone may not want to be a parent. Again, financial instability or stability, whatever relates to that person's own experience. It's the fear of giving birth, the fear of undergoing that experience. And these are all valid reasons. And so I'm going to end this part of the episode before I go into the main part of the episode of what the topic of the episode, by saying that to that listener, I'm sorry you had, and I told this listener this directly too. I'm sorry you had that experience. It's not cool. And I think that many psychics have lessons to learn in being more humble and not, it's one thing to think that you are always right. That's okay, I guess, to a certain extent, because I know some psychics that say to other psychics, I believe that everything that comes through in a message through me is from spirit and that it is from the beyond. I think that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that, but you also have to hold space for people who may not see it the same way. For clients who tell you, well, that doesn't make sense. I have no interest in becoming an artist. I have no interest in becoming a CEO. Why are you telling me I'm going to become a CEO? Why are you telling me I'm going to become a famous painter? Because maybe what is coming through is absolutely from spirit, is absolutely from the beyond, from their spirit guides, from their angels. But maybe we are misinterpreting the message as we share it with the client. So that's where humility has to come in. Share some of your stories with me. Share more of your stories. And thank you to this listener for sharing their story. If I did not make any sense just now, it's such a tricky thing to navigate, because we want, as psychics, to have faith in what we do, to trust spirit that what's coming through is meant to come through. And at the same time, we have to recognize we're human. And that balancing act, I think that is the hardest part, in my experience, of being a psychic medium. There's a documentary that called Look Into My Eyes that I've been raving about. I haven't seen it, but I'm raving about it because one of my good psychic friends is in it, Kenya Hall, and I'm about to see it today, actually, the day before this podcast, or the week before this podcast goes live and gets published. And I will let you know what I think of the movie. I'm so excited to see this documentary. And I watched the trailer, and there's one part where this psychic medium is asked, are you ever concerned or afraid that you're wrong? And he says, all the time. And it was just a small clip, but as he answered that, he was so just like honest, like, yep, all the time. And it makes me even more excited to see this documentary, Look Into My Eyes. And I think it's not talked about enough, because I think in this world of psychic mediumship and other kinds of psychic work, people have set this expectation for psychics to be godlike, capital G-O-D, godlike. It's just not possible. Just not. I mean, if I were godlike, if I were to that level, I would be rolling in dough, because it's so easy for the ego to take advantage of that. And I think the most godlike we can be, capital G-O-D, godlike we can be, is to be respectful to ourselves and to other people, do no harm to ourselves and other people, and to be sincere and to be honest, to be authentic. And that can sometimes feel messy, but that's okay. That's how the universe works. Nature can be messy sometimes. Okay, before I go down a rabbit hole, let's talk about today's topic, because that could be a whole other episode, y'all, what I just shared. But please share your stories with me. I love to hear your stories. I love to hear what you think of the podcast. I could really use some reviews, so please send in some reviews. And I will share your stories on the podcast. If you allow me to, I can keep you anonymous. I could share a voice recording. Send it all in. All right. Totally switching gears. Past lives. What can we learn from past lives? And what is the point of learning about past lives? And there are a couple things that I want to hit on. I'm going to write them down before I go down rabbit holes, like I always do. One is the goal of learning about past lives. And I think the other I want to hit on is honoring those past lives without reliving them. And I will share exactly what I mean by that when we get to that portion. So I'm going to first share that I did a past life regression session maybe in I think it was 2012 or 2011. I had a family member who did it for me, who had been trained through the program of Brian Weiss, who wrote Many Lives, Many Masters, which is an excellent book. Excellent book about an atheist/agnostic psychologist who put a client under hypnosis named Christine, I think, Christine or Christina. And this client started talking about lives in history that she had lived, talking in the first person. And he was very curious about this, and he noticed that over time, these sessions of her remembering, or let's say not remembering, at this point he thinks her talking about these lives in the past, started to help her psychological healing process. And then in one session, as she's under hypnosis, she says something to him that only he and his wife would know about, from what I remember reading. And he was convinced then that there is life after death, and life goes on and on and on, and we are reborn into different lives. And he became one of the I'll say the most popular speaker and author on past lives. So my family member, had gone to seminars led by Brian Weiss and his team and learned how to do past life regression. He himself, my family member, had done past life regression sessions before, a series of them with someone else. And so he did it for me once, and I saw 4 past lives. And I won't go into too much detail about some of them because they're very, very, very personal. I'll just be very vague. But in one past life, I was a Native American man in the Yosemite region, and it felt like the 1800s. And this is going to sound extremely wild. So if you think Juan is batshit crazy, I won't blame you for it. But this is, and I have the recording of this. Maybe I'll share the recording with y'all. I have to think about that. It was an intense 1 to 2 hours. But I'm gonna think of doing that. Maybe I'll share clips from that session. I haven't heard it really since then. Anyways, if you were to hear the recording, you would hear this: Native American man, Yosemite region in California, 1800s. And I remember telling my family member, and just to know, I was not under any hypnosis. It was like a meditation, and I was seeing these images. And I told him that I felt beautiful in my body. I looked beautiful. I had this long, beautiful black hair. And my skin was just gorgeous, gorgeous color skin. I was noticing how beautiful I was. But being in that person's body, being in that, I can't explain it, but being this Native American man, I felt myself being this man, and I felt how beautiful I was. And I loved being in nature, connecting with the trees. And I felt beautiful because I felt part of the beautiful things around me. And then a white man comes in from the greenery, from the trees around me. And I am feeling a little nervous and scared, but very curious. And he's also very curious. And this sounds so problematic now, but this is what I saw. I couldn't make this shit up. It fast forwarded this memory, and this man and I had a love affair, and we fell in love. But we had to keep it in secret, obviously, because, well, number one, we were 2 men, and number 2, we were very different races. And this man I recognized in this man an ex in my current life as Juan. I had just broken up from this ex, I think the year or 2 before this past life regression. And one of the things I wanted to learn in my past life regression session was my connection with this ex. And in this lifetime, as a Native American, I saw my ex's soul in the body of this white man. And we had this very secret love affair. And in my Juan life, we sort of had a secret relationship because he wasn't out to his family, his parents. Now, I'm going to say why there's something problematic about this past life. Because with race and the history of systemic racism and oppression in this country, a story like this, there could be many issues with it. The oppressor seducing the oppressed, the oppressor taking advantage perhaps of the oppressed. So I want to acknowledge that if anyone else were to tell me this kind of a story, I would think there would be something not very cool about it, but I'm just sharing what I saw. So I feel comfortable sharing that I saw that past life. I don't know to this day if it was real because it's almost like something out of a weird tone deaf romance novel, but it's what I saw. And I'm going to share why I think there's some validity to it, because there are other past lives I saw that felt very real. And it just makes me think, well, if those felt real, the other three that I saw, then maybe there was something real about this one. It just felt I could still remember the images being in the forest. I could still remember those memories that I saw during that regression session. So I've never really shared that one, I don't think, on the podcast, not to that detail, and I feel uncomfortable sharing it because it feels icky. But I also think that anything is possible. Human history is very interesting, and anything's possible. Maybe there could have been a love affair between a Native American man and a white person back then who were of the same gender. I don't know, but that's my experience in that memory. And because I can acknowledge that it's weird, hopefully you know that I come to this episode sharing these past lives with good intention and not to be icky or tone deaf. So that's past life number 1. Past life number 2, which one was it? I think this was number 2. And this all happened within 2 hours. Number 2, I was brought to a past life where I was a little girl and it felt like Russia. And I couldn't tell if it was the later 1800s or the early 1900s. And what's interesting is I saw my family from this lifetime in that lifetime with me as they look in this lifetime. But I looked like a little Caucasian girl with light brown hair. And I felt like I was 5 years old maybe. And I believe in that lifetime, my brother in this lifetime was a brother in that lifetime, but he was older than me, whereas in this lifetime, I'm older than him. And in that lifetime, there was a person from my current lifetime who in that lifetime was very cruel to me. And in my Juan lifetime, this is somebody with whom I have had a very challenging relationship with all my life. And in that lifetime, it was pretty horrendous, the things that this person did to me as a little girl. And I was sobbing as I was telling these memories to the person doing the past life regression for me, sobbing. And it was very intense. The next lifetime I saw, I was an old man in England. And an old white man. It's interesting, in all these lifetimes, I think I remember 3 of them. I can't remember the 4th one. But in all these lifetimes, I was a different race. And in 2 of them, I was white. So anyways, in this one, I was an old white man in his 80s in England. And I was in an older log or like wooden cabin or wooden cottage. And my nurse taking care of me, who was much younger than me, was I recognize in her the soul of a friend from my current lifetime. And I remember looking at this nurse and thinking how much I loved and appreciated her because she took such good care of me. I get emotional thinking about it because I could just feel the love that I, as this old man, felt for this nurse. And it's interesting how the soul of this nurse is the soul of a friend in this lifetime. And this friend in this lifetime had very emotional feelings for me, was, I think, sort of in love with me for a very long time. But because I am gay, she couldn't be with me. And there was a time when we didn't talk for a while. And then we reconnected. And I just find it interesting that in this Juan lifetime, I had this experience with this female friend who had these feelings for me that I couldn't return. And that caused sometimes some challenges in our friendship. And yet, and in this past lifetime, she was someone who was my caregiver and took care of me. I just find that so interesting, and I feel something in my heart when I share that. It's like there's this connection in experiences between our relationship in that lifetime and our relationship in this lifetime in some way. The interesting part of this past life is I see myself as this old man, and I see myself die. Or not, I see myself die. I'm in the body and I feel myself die. And my nurse is next to me. And I all of a sudden I ascend up into the roof. I go beyond the roof, up into the clouds, and higher up into the clouds, almost at the level of, not the level of the sun. That's not possible. But almost feeling like I was next to the sun. That's how bright it was up there in the sky. And I see Jesus, but I don't see Jesus' face. I see him neck down, and I hug him. I hug him like, oh my God, I'm so happy to see you. And he makes me feel safe, and he makes me feel secure. And I remember just feeling a lot of happiness. I felt like, even though I was this old man who had died, I felt like a little kid hugging Jesus. And like a son who is seeing his father again after a long time. And that was the end of that lifetime memory. Those are the 3 lifetimes that I remember. I have to go back to my recording and listen to them. So what was the point of me doing those? Well, number 1, I was curious. And I think I also wanted to learn, excuse me, I wanted to learn at a time when I was not a very content person. I wanted to use past life regression to get answers to why I am not content, why these things have happened to me, why I have these kinds of relationships, who this person meant to me, like that ex. Why did this ex and I have a relationship? What is it about our relationship that had to happen? That it had to happen. And I got some answers. But let me tell you that I think if I were to have a past life regression session now, it would hit different, because I think now I try to live life from a more self-empowering mindset, with that mindset. And I think that the messages and the learnings at a past life regression session would hit different. I would take them more to heart. I think at that time I wanted easy answers. I wanted answers, period. And there's nothing wrong with looking for answers, getting answers. But I think it's important to apply what we learn in these past life regressions. And I didn't do that very well back then. But I honor that I had this experience, because it was a really intense experience. And I'll say that to this day, do I know 100% that those past lives were real? No. I think 80 to 90% of me feels that they were real, because it's like when some of us psychics do readings and we're like, did that really happen? Did I really say that? Was that really that accurate? Like, we know it's real, but it's almost so crazy that it's hard to believe it's real. But I remember feeling these lifetimes as I was remembering them in that session. I remember feeling the emotions of all of them. I remember, again, I was sobbing at that one lifetime where I was a little girl. So now I want to talk about honoring and not reliving past lives. And I'm going to hit directly on my past life as a Native American man. There is this way of thinking, like when someone says, oh, I do this ritual because I was a Native American in a past life, or I wear these kinds of clothes because I was an African shaman in a past life, putting something out there. I believe that cultural appropriation is absolutely an issue. I also believe that there's a difference between appropriating a culture and paying homage to a culture. For instance, I am part Peruvian, and if somebody who is not Peruvian decided to dress up as put on the Peruvian colorful Peruvian Andean skirt, and with the big hat that a lot of Andean women in Peru wear for Halloween, I would think that would be very weird. Very weird. Like, there's no reason. It's odd. But if somebody goes to a gala and wears a skirt that resembles that, I wouldn't have a problem with it. Now, not everyone feels the same way, and I'm okay with that. I think there's a difference between paying homage and honoring or admiring a culture and using something from a culture for personal gain or attention. That's icky. So when people say, well, I do this because I was a Native American in a past life, this is my response to that. You were born into this lifetime as you for a reason. You were not born into this lifetime to relive a past life. If you feel you were a Native American in a past life, there is no reason for you to live this life as a Native American when you are Mackenzie Jones. I don't know who Mackenzie Jones is, making up that name. Mackenzie Jones living in Idaho and Caucasian. It's like when people do psychic work to escape themselves. Been there. We are not here to escape our human selves. We are not here to escape the human lives we were born into. We are here to embrace the lives that we were born into and to learn to be content of who we are. So the point of past life regression is not to become those past lives, those past personalities again. I think there's nothing wrong with incorporating things from our past lives into our learnings in this lifetime. Or maybe, whatever you do in the privacy of your own home, if you burn white sage because you saw that you were a Native American in a past life, I don't see anything wrong with that. I would say get your white sage from a Native American outpost or business. That's what I do. I used to buy white sage just off the internet from anywhere, and I quickly learned that, No, the Native American community provides this as a resource and uses it as a resource for their own cultures. I'm going to find a Native American business that sells white sage to the public. And I did. That's Wandering Bull LLC. And I buy my sage only from them now, because I think it's important to give back to the community that has given us this beautiful ritual. And they sell it to the public. So if you're going to do things that are going to honor your past lives, maybe do it in a way that honors people who are part of those communities today and doesn't take advantage of them in any way. And live in this human life. Don't escape your current life for a past life. We are born into multiple lifetimes for a reason, to keep learning, to keep growing. Your soul entered this lifetime to learn something different, to do something different than it has done before. So why would we want to dishonor the journey of our soul by focusing on a past? And I think it's like living in the past within our lifetime too. We are where we are today, and it does not do us any justice to focus on 20 years ago. It does do us justice to take what happened to us 20 years ago, or the mistakes we made 20 years ago, and use them to learn something about ourselves, to improve ourselves, to evolve and be better people. That's different. And that is what I think the goal of doing a past life regression is, to look into the distant past or the recent past. Maybe it was a recent past life. To look into the past, to learn something about ourselves today, not to relive the past. And if we want to honor our past, doing it in a way that does harm to no one, including ourselves, that is fair to everyone, including ourselves. I think what's really great about the way people have evolved around honoring cultures versus appropriating them is that we are way more clearer and way more honest about injustices towards communities of color and towards communities that have been at the other end of oppression and unfairness and prejudice. And it's so easy for us in this spiritual community to look. I don't believe that our souls have any gender. I don't believe our souls have any race. I don't believe our souls have any hair color. None of this that you're seeing on me, you're seeing my skin color on this video, my race, I can tell you about, my ethnicity, my last name, my accent that I speak with when I speak English, where I was born, all these things, they're left here on earth when I die. That doesn't mean that we disregard people's identities. I was going to say that it's very easy in the spiritual community to say, oh, I don't see color, I don't see race, because there is no such thing in the spirit world. But there is such thing in the human world. And we are not here to be living all the time in the spirit world. We have to acknowledge the very humanity of the people around us all the time, and especially when people don't believe the way that we do. That is being respectful. That is being, in my opinion, a good human being. And so when it comes to past lives, there's nothing wrong with honoring them, nothing wrong with admiring a culture that you feel you lived a past life in, but just know when what you're doing is harming somebody else. Know when what you're doing, what you're saying, is exploiting another culture just to make you feel like you belong to something. When really, maybe you should be thinking about the culture you were born into and appreciating that. Hot takes. Yeah, it's a tricky thing to talk about past lives and how we incorporate them into our current day lives. But I'll just end with repeating, just like how you can take something that happened 20 years ago and use it to help you grow as a person, to help you love yourself more as a person, we can use our past life regression. We can use our past lives to help us learn about our souls and appreciate our humanity, because in those past lives, we may be seeing things that we struggled with or things that we enjoyed, and just how human those experiences were in those past lives. Appreciating humanity, the experience of being human, and appreciating how we are so connected to everything that is. If you're going to do anything with your past lives to learn anything, I think it's those two things. And when you have good intention, when you approach past lives with the desire to learn more about yourself and about the world, the universe, and this job called being human, I think the only thing that can result from that is wanting to be part of an effort, a movement, that's a big word, to make sure other people have the same access as you do to loving themselves more and appreciating themselves more. I think that is the ultimate goal of past lives, to help us appreciate everything that is, the cycle of life, the cycles of the universe, and how much bigger we are. How much bigger, just how big we are, and we think so small of ourselves sometimes, and past lives can help us think way bigger of ourselves. The infinity of our souls, of our essence. Let me know what you think. Have you had past life regression? Have you seen a past life? I do want to say very quickly that one time I was walking my dog, and I was talking to my spirit guides into spirit, and I asked them to help me understand more my body image dysmorphia, which I talk a lot about on this podcast. And like in a flash, I saw myself as a white guy. Always a white guy. I guess I have a lot of lifetimes as a white guy, but there are many more lifetimes than the 4 or 5 I've seen. Absolutely. But a lifetime as a white French man, a queer white French man in what felt like the 1700s. Can't really put my finger on it. And I was a very good-looking man, and I took advantage of people with my looks. And I understood that, oh, so in that lifetime, I knew how good looking I was, and I used it to exploit people. And I harmed a lot of people with my narcissistic tendencies. And in this lifetime, I struggle with how I feel I look or how I feel in my body. And I'm learning to love myself in a way that's balanced, not in a way that's going to take advantage of other people. I don't see it as punishment. I don't see this as punishment. It's just my soul wants to know what it's like to reach this equilibrium where I love myself without seeing myself as better than other people. Interesting, right? So tell me your stories. If you've had a past life regression session, love that rhyme, or if you have thoughts on this, I'm open to it, especially with the cultural appropriation piece, because I feel like it's something that we're starting to wake up to, of not culturally appropriating communities and cultures that we feel we lived past lives in. I think it's important to talk about it because we want to be good people. We want to have good intentions. Let's be smart and honest and authentic about our experiences while not exploiting other people's experiences, whether in their past lives or in their current lives. So tell me your thoughts. I'm curious about your opinions, and I hope you have a lovely rest of your day. Ciao. If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.